My name's John Garnica, and I'm the founder and director of RAREC.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. All right, y'all, so today we are going to be leaving the United States, and we are going to be leaving the traditional zoo setting to head to a very cool, very special conservation organization that actually reached out to me about being on the podcast, and I looked into what they do, and I'm really impressed. And this is kind of different than a lot of the conservation orgs that we've had on, because even though RAREC has been around for a while, they're not some big name, and they're not getting global support and all the crazy things that we see with organizations like Red Panda Network and the Cheetah Conservation Fund and all of these incredible organizations. RAREC is doing the thing in a pretty amazing way and always looking for how to get to that next level. I love so much about what you're going to hear here. So we're going to get to that shortly, but before we do, just a couple of quick reminders. Make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the Tuesday interview episodes or Friday Zoo News episodes. Make sure you're following along on the socials at Rossifari and on TikTok at Rossifari Pod. And if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/Rossifari and check it out. So with all that stuff said, let's get to my interview with John from RAREC.
We're a nonprofit organization based in Iquitos, Peru. It stands for the Rainforest Awareness Rescue Education Center. It's a project that I started in 2011 on paper and whatnot, but the works had been kind of since I arrived here in Peru in 2007. I grew up in Los Angeles, California my whole life. I was always been very fortunate that I've been able to work in what I was passionate about and what I loved. And in LA, I worked with fish, aquarium fish in the aquarium industry. As a young child, I had aquariums. I used to keep them, had exotics as a child as well. I was really always passionate about animals. And started working in specialty stores and saltwater aquarium stores. And then I started getting into reef tanks. And then once I started to see that the servicemen, and this is all in even before high school and junior high. And then I started seeing that servicemen were getting paid $60 an hour. And I was just like, oh, wow. I was like, to play with fish. And I was like, that sounds wonderful. So I started getting more into the hobby and going with these stores, doing commercials, movies like Deuce Bigalow. Do you know who Deuce Bigalow is?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, no, I love all of those like Sandler and Sandler adjacent movies are like, I grew up watching that stuff. Also, this is the first time we've ever talked about a male gigolo on my podcast, so congratulations.
Literally, yeah, that's what people, when that movie came out, that's what people used to call me. It didn't faze me because, that's what that was what was cool. That's what I was passionate about. That's what I liked. And it was cool once I saw these people going to, then I started seeing that, going to these obviously like exclusive businesses, very influential people's homes. So then I started branching off my own, got one client, and I found that, and that's been my motto in life. Always do, things that you're passionate about and do it well, and people will notice. So referral, word of mouth. I branched out, had a large clientele. I even set up Kanye West before you even knew who Kanye was, before everybody knew who he was. You know, he had just bought this house in the Hollywood Hills, in front of the voice of Batman for the animated series, Jonathan Cook. I used to do his aquarium. Then there was this house in front of this beautiful home in the Hollywood Hills that had just been built. And the developer was having issues selling that home for at least a couple of years. So then one day, it was a Sunday, 1st of 2004. And, generally I've always loved to work. I've always loved to work. And I said, hey, if I can get started on my week, why am I it's just because it's New Year's, it's Sunday. I had a van that had like the Coca-Cola wrap on it, advertising what it is that I did. And I was just like, you know what, maybe, I'll go to work today and I'll go do what it is that I love. And possibly people will be home and maybe see my van. So I go do Jonathan Cook's, he does voiceovers, his house, and Kanye's mom, Donda. She comes out, oh, my son would like to possibly do an aquarium. And I was like, really? I was like, okay, wonderful. I was like, so, here's my card. And so he calls me and he was just like, yeah, I'm Kanye West. And I was like, okay, Kenya? He's like, no, Kanye. He and God honest truth, like that's exactly what I said. He's like, no, I just signed a deal with Rockefeller. He was just like, my album's going to be coming out soon. And he gave it to me. And I listened to it and I told him, wow, I was like, this is different. Like College Dropout, that first album that I did. It was, growing up in LA, you like hip hop, and I was always into hip hop. And I was just like, wow. So make a long story short, he ended up getting a really beautiful, he was, he normally when people, have me do things in their homes or we work together, it's generally like what I design or what I envision. He had his own style. He wanted to do this tank in his bathroom, a beautiful bathroom overlooking the Hollywood Hills. And it was the center divider from his bathtub. So he was basically taking a shower in his with his fish.
That's amazing.
That was nice. So the point is dealing with cool clients like that, and the point where I started driving a lot more in Los Angeles and spending more time in my vehicle, driving around. Have you ever been to LA?
Oh, yeah. I've played out there multiple times. I'm a professional musician for my day job, so I spend a lot of time out in LA.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, yeah. So, driving around Santa Barbara, Montecito, Malibu. So then, I had... service guys working under me, but these clients, they were paying well, so they wanted me there, and which is understandable. And then it just got to the point, I had just met my first wife, and life in LA, I was doing well, but then it just became to the point where I started to lose passion for it because I just found myself driving more, not doing what it was that I liked. So, I just started, thinking like, I'm 24, 25, and you're thinking, then 26 comes and you're just like, is this what life's going to be about? Is this a rat race and working every day, hustle and bustle so that you can be all day and then come home and then, enjoy the things that you're working from 8 to when you get home from work, how much time can you enjoy your things? Right. And then then you're looking for the weekend, then you're working the whole entire week just to look for the weekend. And I was like, man, is this what life's going to be about? And I was just, contemplating. And then she was like, her family was Argentinian and Peruvian. She had ties to Peru. Her father, he had business ties to Lima. And she was like, well, why don't we go to Peru? And I was like, I don't know about that. I've never been to Peru. I don't know why I would leave Los Angeles for Peru, but, she was like, well, I don't know, like, I was just like, I don't know. So on this particular day, when we're having this conversation, I go and I visit one of my wholesalers. Generally, all of my clients, they were all saltwater, but I had to get some freshwater fish for a secretary for one of my big clients. And I hadn't seen these wholesalers in a while. And they were like, John, how you been? And I was just like, I've been okay, but I'm thinking about getting out of this business. And they're like, really? Like, what would you do? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I was like, this one here, Priscilla's here talking about going to Peru. And they were like, Peru? We just got a shipment of fish from Peru. I was like, really? I was like, from where? He's like, in Iquitos. I was like, where is that? In a derogatory, clean way of saying it.
Yes.
And he was like, it's in the Amazon. And as soon as he said the Amazon, I was just like, what? Anybody that's passionate about animals growing up as a child, the Amazon rainforest, like, oh my goodness, that's the place, I don't know if it's on everybody's bucket list, but it was just a dream. So I go home and I look at Iquitos on YouTube, and I just saw the craziness, the tuk-tuks here and a monkey there, and just everything. So I was just like, whoa. I was like, that looks like an adventure. I was like, definitely. And I had a fire sale. I pretty much gave away my business, and I was gone in 3 months. And some of my clients were like, John, are you okay? I was like, no, it's going to be okay. I was like, what were they called? This fresh Southland Aquatics. They say that they're going to buy some fish off of me and I can send them some fish. And at the time I was just like, when you're young, you're really naive and you go for what you feel is right. And and you do that. And that's when I came out here, I was like, whoa, it's a big change, John. It's a big difference from, the real jungle is different from the concrete jungle.
Yes. Dude, I will tell you real quick, just to interrupt for a second. I don't know fully what I expected in this conversation. I did a lot of looking into your organization, but your story, I wanted to hear from you. But it was definitely not going from LA, aquarium creator for the stars to the middle of Peru. I'm blown away already. That's hilarious. And you just 3 months and gone. Just insane.
Put everything on Craigslist. I should have sold my route for $200,000. I sold it for $20,000 to this guy named Mike Wolf I think he's still doing fish. I'm not sure. And I didn't care, I never did anything for money, John. Like, it was what my happiness was.
Right.
And I was just like, it'll work itself out, if I, I don't know. That's just, I wouldn't do it any different. If I went back, I wouldn't have done it any different. But definitely, just always positive. You gotta, things will always work out. I was always with that mentality and still am with that. You gotta be ambitious and just the tenacity, just have great work ethic and just, so anyways, I come out here and big culture shock. It was a big culture shock. And I started doing well. I started, breaking into this business. It was a business. It's a business. And I liked it at first because everything was new and I found it easy to get clients because I was a foreigner. And generally, people from other countries like dealing with somebody that was I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, trustworthy or, I was a person that did what they said that they were going to do because, I grew up in LA, the golden thumb is, you're a man of your word and you do what you say you do and you treat your clients well. And that's, I don't know, it always worked out for me there. So I didn't see any difference in doing it here or there. So that's whatever. And I started doing really well. In the first 3 years, I became like the third largest exporter of tropical fish here in Peru. And that was fun because I was going out dealing with these people. But then I found myself, once I started breaking into the Chinese market, I found this one client and Taiwanese and we started, like, you want to go into us with China? And I was just like, yeah, let's do it. So now the demand was even greater. I found myself going deeper into the rainforest and dealing with fishermen. Growing up in a developed country, the greatest capitalistic, whatever you want to call it, the States. So, you're just trying to, be good, the best at what you're doing and doing it right. And then I found myself on these long journeys, thinking about what it was that I was doing. I'm here, taking the natural resource, and it's the God honest truth. This is what I'm, you're on a boat for hours, thinking, hey, it was pretty sad, what you just saw, you're dealing with people that don't even have shoes on. And then these communities, there's people, these fishermen are happy that you're giving them work and, helping them out, take care of themselves, their family. And they've offering you monkey soup that they've just slaughtered a troop of endangered woolly monkeys. And the babies are there next to the carcasses of their beheaded mothers and stuff like that. So, I had never seen this stuff. And I'm just like, okay, that was pretty intense. And after doing that, because it's seasonal, like this campaign, the Arowana campaign, where you have to go deeper into the forest. And then I just started thinking, like, what am I doing? I've come from a developed country, taking the natural resources. Instead of taking from the Amazon, I should be bringing something to here. I'm like, what is it that these people need? Like, I love animals. I was just like, you know what? I did a rescue center, but if for us to put an end to this, we have to work with the community. These people, who am I here to judge them, all the things that you're doing, when the biggest problem here is, well, first is education, but the lack of opportunity, John. I swear to God. And that's honestly, one thing that has also helped me stay sane and somehow, give some clarity. I've always been I'm not big into religion. That's a whole nother subject. But, but I've always been to a higher power. If you want to, when I've had this conversation, and I know people are kind of weird about God and all that stuff nowadays. You can call it whatever you want. And karma for sure. Like, do good to, that stuff comes back to you. Just everything. We want to call it Yahi, Mother Nature, Jehovah, Allah, whatever, Abraham, whatever you want to call it. That force, that energy will, if you're a good person and your intentions are good, it'll guide you. Yeah, there'll be many bumps on the road, but just stay positive and don't do anybody wrong, and just be, what's the word? Just be justly. Yeah. So, justly and just good. So I was thinking, what could I do? And I was just like, all right, I'll build a rescue center, but I have to do an education center because I want to work with these people. And I just thought at the time, it was just so easy. Oh, okay. Yeah. You know what? You do it. So I stopped exporting tropical fish and I had saved up some money and I went looking for properties. I didn't want to do anything too remote. And I know we're pretty remote, but at least we can get here by car, by vehicle. So we're 1 hour outside of the city of Iquitos by road. I didn't want to do something on the river because of just all the challenges of getting supplies, and it just makes everything more costly. And, I just thought that would be the best way to do things. So I found this property, people can, out here in a developing country, you have to really, I've seen a lot of foreigners come here and, have big dreams wanting to do things, but the jungle ate them. And what does that mean? The people are always so trustworthy here, foreigners I have found. And unfortunately, the locals here, and I'm not talking bad about them. This is the God honest truth that, if anybody wants to ever do anything out here, is just, you have to really be, if anybody ever tells you anything, you have to really, do your homework and not take anybody's word for it. You have to really watch yourself and make sure. So anyways, the property, I found this great property here, but it took me a year to purchase it because, they can tell you that it doesn't flood, but you have to make sure it doesn't flood.
Gotcha.
There's just things, people are unfortunately just dishonest and sometimes, and I don't know, but so I found this place and I started building my education center. And at the same time, a couple labs. I started bringing bulldozers, to make my ponds, to work with different species. And I got in a motorcycle accident 6 months into the project. And leaving the project about 7:00 at night, we were, working with locals, always, working with locals here. And I hit a bus that was in the middle of the road on kilometer 40. I'm on kilometer 47. And on kilometer 43, there was a bus in the middle of the road with no reflectors, no emergency lights, and I hit it straight on.
Oh, gosh.
So I broke my femur. I lost half my blood, femur, collarbone, shattered my tibia, fibula, femur. The worst. Coma for 2 months. They were going to chop my leg off. And luckily, at that time, the regional president here went and visited me because he had been a friend of my father-in-law's. And he told him, don't cut his leg off or whatever. So that's a real long story as well. But so after I get out of the hospital, about a month and a half after, a couple of months, I started doing physical therapy. And unfortunately, I went and I did physical therapy in a swimming pool that wasn't really well chlorinated. And there was a small scab by where they had taken out my stitches by my ankle. Oh my goodness, John.
Oh
my goodness.
Boy.
You can't imagine. A staph infection that ended up growing into osteomyelitis. I had a bone infection for 2 years, 17 surgeries. They pulled out 2 liters of disgusting, putrid, like anaerobic. You can't imagine it.
Oh my goodness.
And so I was 2 years in bed. It was like one of the worst experiences ever, where I also had to do surgeries just to clean that wound with no anesthesia. Yeah, like in the movies, like where you actually have to bite.
Oh my gosh. Oh
yeah. I had to do that because, there was times where the anesthesiologist. So this was all in the regional hospital. This wasn't in a clinic. This wasn't back in the United States. I'm here getting taken care of because imagine if I would have been airlifted, to Lima or even go back to the United States, this would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I had to stick it out. There was a anesthesiologist. The mothers here were complaining, like, why is this guy getting special treatment when we have mothers here scheduled for cesareans and they're not getting taken care of? So my traumatologo, I guess, trauma surgeon, like the bone. Yeah.
Sure.
He was just like, John, we still have to, clean your wound, and no anesthesiologist today to put the epidural in your back.
Oh,
I was like,
God.
okay, well, let's do it. And after doing that 3 times, I was like, no. He's like, yeah, I can't really get in there because this is extremely, see how painful this is. So I got transferred to another clinic. Anyways, and during this time in my recovery, and that was one thing also that I was trying to get back to the project, to keep building. Unfortunately, I had a bunch of material here that all got stolen during the time while I'm in bed. And, I asked to be interpreter. I had a friend in the government that she was a veterinarian that had just become the director of our local zoo. Our local zoo, oh my goodness. Yeah, they only have one dart for all the animals, to sedate them.
Oh, wow.
And she started reaching out to zoological facilities, asking for aid and assistance. And the Nashville Zoo replied to her. So the Nashville Zoo asked her to come on out, and yeah, we'll be more than happy to see what it is, the situation. And, this sounds pretty dire story. Let me see it in person. So she asked me to be an interpreter. I was just like, yeah. I was like, okay, but, I'll do my best that I can. And the president of the Nashville Zoo, his name is Rick Schwartz. My goodness.
Amazing. Just an amazing human.
And you've heard of him?
I know Rick and Heather. Yeah. I know Heather very well, but yeah.
Wow. My goodness. So yeah, when you talk to her, yeah.
Oh yeah. I will be emailing her after this, I'm sure.
Wonderful. Yeah. So that's one of the things right there, John. So in my mind, and I look back and I reflect, this all goes back to like your destiny or being in the right place at the right time. Maybe God put this person. I don't know, dude. I don't know. Everything that we've done here, I've done here, it's just, you call me really lucky. I don't know what it is, dude. I don't know what it is, but it's just perfect places, perfect time, that higher energy, karma, Mother Nature, just looking out after you. Imagine this, meeting such a cool person such as Rick Schwartz out here. And we're going to talk about how he can help the zoo. And, so we start talking, and it turns out Rick, he has a background in fish as well. That's how he started. And we hit it off there. We start talking about fish, and he's like, so what are you doing out here? And I tell him my story. I'm building this rescue center, whatnot. I got in this accident. You could see the juice coming out of my leg from the osteomyelitis. I was like, I've been bedridden. And he's like, wow, John. He's like, well, let me know how that goes after our meeting. It's really challenging here to work anything here with the government because of the corruption. I think Rick sent some supplies or whatnot. And then my friend, those government positions are, people don't hold that position too often. She got changed, and so I started going, they offered him the zoo, and he was like, yeah, I'm not going to take care of a zoo from a country, that doesn't, that's exactly what they offered him.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I understand. I was just like, but he's like, John, well, let me know how things go. Keep in touch. So I was like, wonderful. So as soon as I go to Lima, get 3 different opinions on what the situation was with my leg. And basically they just said, yeah, you just have to wait it out. They also we did a CAT scan, like a nuclear CATs where they put this fluid into your blood, and you can see, I can't think of the terminology right now. Whatever. They saw bone fragments in my leg that from the initial accident. So he's like, well, we could definitely go in there and take them out, or your body will just eventually wear them down. And I was just like, okay. I was like, so after 2 months, I felt better. My leg finally closed up. Juices weren't coming out.
Good.
I sold my apartment that I had in Iquitos, and I was just like, man, if I've gone through all of this, John, it has to be for a reason, right? So I went all in. I sold my last property that I had during this time. While I was able to sit in bed, I had my apartment. It was a building, rented out, and I sold it. And people were like, "Are you crazy? Like that's the way you're keeping yourself, afloat." I was like, yeah, it's gonna take longer to do what it is. What little by little, I was just like, I'll just get this chunk out and put it into the property, and I know it'll work itself out. So I sell my apartment, I put it all into the property, and I'm here, finishing up my clinic. And I kid you not, John, like money, it goes like water, even in a developing country, dude. Oh my God. I was, I had a clinic, somewhat built, and my poles were up for the electricity because there's no electricity out here as well.
Wow.
So, I'm sending, Rick messages, hey, giving him progress reports, and, Rick responds, oh, John, this is awesome. He sent us $10,000. This is great. He's like, keep going forward. And I was like, great. So I use all the money, and then he goes silent. He's busy. He's the president, he's doing his things, and here I am just trying to figure out how to make this sustainable. Then I start planting papayas. Anything that you do, I did it really well. Then, my neighbor he was growing chickens. He did pretty well doing that. He had like 15,000 chickens. He has 3 other properties. And I was just like, well, let me try some chickens. These are just things that you have to do to, try to keep your dream going, John. I tried doing 500 chickens. I did them all, but after that, it takes about 45 days for them to grow up to a keg, and then you can sell them. And I'm like, you know what? I never want to do this again. It's just my respects to anybody that does that farm life and oh my goodness, and try to make a profit of it. I mean, for it to be profitable, you have to do it on a larger scale. But I wanted to try it out to see if I could do it. But for me to get my investment back, I would have had to have done that 3 more times. And I was just like, yeah, no. I was just like, the papayas, after 8 months, they started producing, but I was going hungry. And I was just like, you know what? Maybe dreams don't come true. I was just like, there's nothing else that I can do. So I put up the property for sale, and I kid you not. And I go, at that time, my girlfriend, she had just been transferred to like the southern tip of Peru, which is Tacna. She was a customs agent. And I'm like, okay, let me go see what could be done over there, be closer to her. And on that weekend, that week I had asked my friend who owns the largest newspaper here in Iquitos in the state of Loreto if he could put up my property up for sale. And it went up, and it's for you to sell something here, it's definitely a buyer's market, because for somebody to buy you don't get too many people that are well off enough to buy, something that's not a necessity.
Right.
And one of the richest people here who owns these ships for bringing cargo and whatnot from the city, bring food, supplies and everything. He had just bought a hotel, and he was interested in my property. And my friend, who was his nephew, calls me up. Hey, my uncle saw your ad, and I also mentioned it to him to see the ad. I was like, I'm in Tacna right now. He's like, don't worry, John. He's like, I can show it to him. And I was like, please let him know that I'm going to be there on Tuesday. And, so he saw it. He loved it. He didn't even negotiate. He's like, I'll buy it. I'll buy it for $250,000. I was like, wonderful. I was like, tell him, like, let's do it. And I kid you not, John. And again, there's the Lord, there's that energy. Rick Schwartz writes me that night, John, how you been, buddy? I was like, Rick, I was like, I'm not doing well, my friend. I was like, I was like, I'm not doing well. I was just like, the property's up for sale. I had to be, that's one thing, John, always be honest.
Right.
And that's been always how I am, even up to this day. I wasn't going to beat around the bush. I had to, if things sound drastic, you got to be honest. You got to be, how else is he going to know?
Right. Yeah.
Or else, how else is anybody else going to know? I'm just always honest. And I told him, look, I was like, he's like, well, what do you need? I was like, well, to be operational, I was like, I need to finish my electricity, whatnot. I did all the numbers. I was like, I need like $14,000. He's like, don't worry, John. He's like, I'll send you 20, like on Monday. I was like, that sounds wonderful, Rick, but please, like, you gotta, like, I can't, this opportunity, you can't be BSing me.
Right.
And he came through, John. He came through for me, and that's how everything started. It is such a blessing. I was so blessed for this gentleman, and that's, that support, that seed money that I got led us to continue to build on little by little, little by little, little by little. And just ever since by then that we've just been building little by little, little by little, little by little, little by little. And that's pretty much, that's the story. That's God honest truth.
That's an amazing story. And it's not, the same level or anything, but I have to tell you real quick, when I started the podcast, my big fear was like, what accredited zoo is going to allow me to interview people and talk to people and trust me when I have no reputation, I have no, listeners, I have no nothing. And the zoo that trusted me and let me get the ball rolling and led to all of this was the Nashville Zoo.
No way.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And they're known in like the industry and stuff for taking like chances, like, giving people shots, even just like people who don't have traditional backgrounds that would get you a keeper job and stuff like that. They've hired a lot of people like that and given them their starts in this career. And I maybe that's just a culture thing that comes right from the top. I don't know, but that's very cool.
Absolute blessing. So, and then Heather reaches out. Oh my God. I'll tell you what, John, everything that I've learned about animals, I have this, this scrub. I wear it because it's comfortable. But you can call me like a vet technician. Everything that I've learned about animals and we've been able to be successful is all because of Heather and her. Like, I'm on the phone with her, Heather, like, what do I do, whatnot? And I've just followed everything that she's ever told me. And I kid you not, brother. She's an absolute blessing, an angel. And because of her, so I don't think I'm a vet by any means, but, it's experience. The experience is the most important thing I've learned. If there's something, because, things, happen, but then you find out, it's the things so that you don't let it happen again. And if you correct those issues, like biosecurity, like do all that and the animals are fine.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes an animal gets sick or whatnot. And if they do, generally it's like the same issues, like with woolly monkeys, it's always respiratory issues. So Heather developed a protocol for any new rescues and we follow that and they do well. They do not well, they do great. So I'm so fortunate that I was able to have these mentors guide me in this whole journey that I've been doing this nonprofit. So right now, the project is developing into a community center. And that's what we're focusing on right now is just working with these local kids here. We've got this really great computer room that the Nashville Zoo, funded. And pretty much everything. And we've also created this great partnership with this platform called the Worldwide Vets that send us veterinary students. And that's been another blessing as well. I'm really thankful for that institution as well. And right now we're just trying to build more relationships. It's so much easier said than done, John. It really is. And just grinding and just trying to develop these relationships with institutions and just trying to, get the word out. I want people to try to see that we're out here and just know that, my respects for institutions that do like what it is that we do and that have been doing it for so long. And I've seen many, I don't want to be, that's one thing also is, coming from a developing country, and me as a person, I'm competitive, right? And I love to see progress. So I love here at the project, I'm a really practical person. I'm not a specialist in anything, or nor will I ever say that I am. I'm really practical. I know what needs to be done and I do it. An idea gets in my head and I don't stop until I, make it into reality. So I've been getting professionals here that have studied all these professions out here, and it's been working out well. But I think definitely what I've noticed is I want to get higher caliber professionals, because the most amount of time that I can get out of, it's great that we give these, young professionals an opportunity to get that hands-on experience and all that. And that's really what it is here. But for us to continue to grow this project, we need more funding to have higher caliber professionals, or not even, and I'm trying not to focus on getting more funding. It's just making this sustainable.
Right.
We're doing great. We have more infrastructure, whatnot, but then the upkeep for the infrastructure, the upkeep for, we have these school programs. We have 35 plus kids coming every day now. We pick them up. We have 2 different age groups that come on out. The gas for that. I'm so happy we finally got an education coordinator. I was the one doing the education in the beginning, showing these kids, showing them my passion and whatnot. But, I can't do that every day. I can't, once you see that it's possible, then you have an idea of the person that you bring in, of what they can do and how they can develop it. So you have to know a little bit of everything, of every part of, if it's veterinary, construction, dude, everything that I built here, I haven't used any architects or contractors. It's all been local people. And you kind of learn, all right, a column here, a foundation here, you kind of learn how to do that. So, I'm not building anything like 3 stories. So we don't have earthquakes here. So like everything's still, everything's stable. But my point is I've been able to do everything, learn a little bit, being kind of a jack of all trades. But the thing is it is what it is. And I've played the hand that I've had and just always been passionate about this and really seeing how we can, because I can rescue all the animals in the Amazon. Well, I really can't, because the cost of it is
right.
But I can take care of them. But if we don't go to the core root of this problem, which is education, man, I'm going to be doing this forever. There's no point in this.
Right.
So that's what my focus is.
That makes sense.
Now,
let's talk about some of those animals, though, because I know my listeners and we need to hear about some animals. So, your story is absolutely incredible. And I'm wow, what a journey. I love it. I love the whole thing. But let's talk about some of the animals that you're saving and that you are dealing with there in Peru.
So basically, we're working with any animal that people that keep as pets. And the only way that they've had them as pets is because the mothers have been killed. So if it's for bushmeat, yeah, it is for bushmeat, for sure. They kill it for bushmeat and they keep the babies. So all the primates in the rainforest, manatees, birds, we haven't got any we have had a kata, birds of prey. I don't know. They don't come in too often. I'm not sure why. I don't know why that is. I guess people don't keep those too often.
Right. Now, wait, how do people keep manatees as pets?
That's a great question. That's a very good question. That's a very, very good question. And cases that I have found people keeping them as pets were before a lot more sense was brought here within these past 14 years. You would find landowners that have a plot of land, that have some lakes, that had them as pets. Maybe a community had them in a pond, hopefully wanting to fatten it up to eat for Christmas dinner.
Wow.
They already killed the mother.
Okay.
But they didn't realize that these manatees for the first 2 years, they're still drinking, off of their mother's milk. So they die. So generally, it's not really common. It's not really common to get these animals in. Let's see, what else? You hear the stories of dolphins at least three times a year. You'll find a community that has these dolphins as pets. And it's the Amazon's so big, John, that it's hard to police and go out into these. So it's usually somebody that saw it and then they reported it. And then it's like, who's willing to encourage the wildlife authorities to go on out and get that animal out and whatnot. So we get tapirs, just for instance, the tapir that we had here, our mayor of one of the districts out here, it was his pet. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So a couple of adult manatees that we rescued in 2016 were also from the regional president who had gone to jail for corruption charges. And he had a bunch of pets on his property. And, we had to go in there and, get his animals out. So it's situations like this. We made national headlines in 2018 with a rescue that we did with Bowie. And you can see it on the internet, where it was the first time in Peru where there was an arrest made for people wild trafficking a manatee on a ship. And we got lucky that the police, the customs, the fish authorities were doing their work, and they asked to see what the contents were of this fishing vessel. It was a pretty big wooden boat, like a little 2-story boat, and looked kind of like the SS Minnow. It wasn't too big, but so there was a cooler, like a cooler, and they asked what's in there, and they saw a live manatee. And you can see they got reporters out. They called us out, and we rescued that animal, and we named that animal Bowie. It was a female. A little girl named Bowie, after one of our potential donors, Bowie Simon. She's a really wonderful philanthropist that has the Angel Wings Foundation. She works with children in Thailand. So, I threw that out into the universe. You know what? Bowie was one of my clients in Los Angeles, and she was very sweet, very personal. She's a former Miss Universe, very, very elegant, very intelligent. She's very beautiful, and she was a great client of mine. And I had high hopes one day of her to see what it is that we were doing out here. So with somebody to her, my thought always being, and you would think, oh, why don't you reach out to her if she was your client for so many years and she knows you? You know what? I wanted to build something so that she could see, okay, all right, what John actually really did something. This is worth something, putting my name and my reputation on. So I've just been building ever since then. And, I tagged her on a few posts, and she commended me. She's like, that's awesome, John. Thank you for taking care of God's creations. It's wonderful what you're doing and wonderful. And so we've been sending messages here and there and trying to get her. I've never asked, you just don't ask, I leave it in God's hands when the time is right, John. And that's one thing also is, I don't really like to ask And it's difficult. It's difficult. You know, even with institutions, that's something that I'm trying to learn on how to ask, because I don't know, you just kind of feel weird about that. I don't know. I'm still trying to understand this business, and if you call it that.
No, I understand. Yeah, no, I understand completely.
I understand this, dude. I really am, and I'm being honest with you. So I've just been going forward and doing everything with passion, and hopefully my idea and what I did with the aquariums, hoping somebody will see this passion, what it is that we're doing, and be different. And, you know, I see that everybody's, you know, trying, you know, to, you know, grow and what it is that they're doing. And I don't see what other people are doing. I'm just focused on what it is that I'm doing and trying to do the best that I can on what it is that I'm doing. So, you know, I have Bowie. That manatee has grown into an adult now. She's in this lake right in front of me right now as we speak. I'm looking to release her. I wanted to release her this year, but we released manatees 2 years ago, and we were tracking them, and it was great. You know, we got a lot of information from that, but the cost of doing things the right way, I could be like other places, or if this wasn't like, if I wasn't trying to be genuine and real, I could be releasing animals and all kinds of stuff and taking, like, my social media, I'll be honest with you, sucks. It's true. Like, I'm not that influencer or like I'm camera friendly and oh my God, and trying to promote it and stuff like that. And I'm releasing this and this and that. But if you want to do things the right way, the only way to do these things is you do your research, where it is that you're placing these animals back, where they used to exist. There's so much that goes into releasing animals that you know, if you're going to do it the right way, the tracking of these animals, everything, the biologist where they're going to stay, the feeding, everything, the boat drivers, the gas, everything. So I did our first release, and the cost of this and getting the personnel on that, man, I was just like, it was wonderful. It's great. Like, the batteries only last for a couple of years, but I have to put our funding. I've got 2 more animals that I want to release, but really I can't. But I have to invest into education right now, because it's just not within our reality right now. You know, I really think that, we've released animals, and I really thought that more institutions, I'll be honest with you, I really thought more institutions would get involved and see this momentum that we've got going. And no, I was just like, okay, all right. So education, that's what we're focusing on right now. And you can actually see the results of these kids. You can see their facial expressions. So I don't know if that personal joy, I don't know what it is, but in reality, it's like life goes by so quick, John, here. And, you know, I came here a young guy. Dude, I've got gray hairs now, man. Life goes by like this fast. So I'm learning to sit back and not look at everything that the project is missing. Our anesthesia machines, we don't have this and what that, you know, everything can always be better, and not be worried about and just what we don't have, and just focus on what we do have, because that it keeps you sane, you know, enjoying that and seeing, you know, you get that gratitude, and at least seeing with the joy in the kids' faces. We've got this cool computer room. We've got an art room that we're developing right now, and I'm trying to show these kids, you know, some coding, you know, some, you know, business development. We've got this t-shirt press machine. We've got a 3D printer, just, you know, different things that they can sustain themselves with without having to put so much pressure on the rainforest. And it makes sense to them. I'm like, kids, instead of being out all night, like what your parents do, you know, or, you know, trying to hunt animals so that they can sell some meat in the city, or burning trees down so you guys can make charcoal, you know, that takes a lot. It's a lot of work. So you'll get more results. You know, the internet, you guys can just stay home and, work on, the computer, learn some skills, sell some stuff. I was like, just anything for them to stop putting pressure on the forest. And they like it. They're really open to it and they love it. And, that's teaching them language. I'm happy that we're getting volunteers from different parts of the world. And that's one thing also, John, is about 95% of our volunteers are all women. And it's pretty inspirational for these kids. And it's generally mostly girls. I want to also that are the kids that are coming here, that they don't have to get pregnant at 13 and 14 years old. That there's girls here that are studying, trying to get a higher education, and that doesn't have to be the reality. And here they are as mentors, and and they've never seen this stuff, because the reality of kids to go into Iquitos, it's just costly. These kids aren't going to go to college. I'm not saying none of them, but the reality is just the cost of getting into the city and whatnot. It's like what their parents would make in a day, because the bus ride there, the food there, the bus ride back home, that's what somebody makes on a daily wage here. So ultimately here is just giving kids skills. And hey, you find my idea is to possibly, find the kids that are maybe want to study something and get somebody to sponsor them or just show them how to be able to take care of themselves. And, social media, some people are so successful with that, and I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to get that down as well too, and get that exposure that we need, and just try to make this sustainable, John. There's so much thoughts that go through my head, and that's our biggest challenge, is making this sustainable. Eventually, I would love to have this beautiful learning center here, and I've been in discussions with Mrs. Simon about this. She showed great interest. And we're currently in the process of doing our nonprofit in the United States. We're working on getting our bank account. We already got our IDN number. So we're being currently reviewed by the IRS, make sure everything is great. And hopefully this will be, a turning point for us to maybe get more people to donate towards our cause. I don't know. I haven't done it before. And I'm thinking this will add more legitimacy to the project. And this is the way, but just to make that and you would think, oh, why haven't you done this before? My God, for the $5,000 that it took to do that, it was an investment that needed to be made, but we've always been a pass through for other institutions. So it wasn't really a necessity for us, but we have to, if you got to stay hungry. And I'm so happy that Mrs. Simon, pushed me to do that. So, I'm just leaving it in God's hands and just doing things to what we can and not freaking out on what's not in our control and just going forward. That's the God honest truth. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I love that because it sounds like you're still evolving what you're doing, but you've also been successful for, 14 years so far, which is like a lot of places, even though you're still seeking long-term sustainability, a lot of organizations fold within the first couple of years. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's doing something like what you're doing for 14 years. You've already won. Like that's already, oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Of course. And I love that you're constantly evolving it. Like you look at the situation and you're like, all right, release will come again. We'll get there. But for now, education is more important. So I'm going to focus on that. And that's important.
And we have a lot of animals that need to be released right now. We just did our examinations, blood work on our spider monkey troop that we've been able to acquire over the years, building it slowly but surely. We got the herpes virus, all the protocol that you need to release these animals. Make sure that you don't introduce any diseases into the animals that into the native population. But then it's tracking them and seeing where, and again, like going back to what it is that we need. Everything is so important. You just don't know what, you just do it little by little, you just do it little by little. And yeah. Oh, but thank you for saying that. That means a lot. But honestly, this is such hard work, John. It's so stressful. It is so stressful. It's very stressing.
I believe it. Yeah. I know a lot of people, because I talk to a lot of people that have done this kind of thing, and
Really?
you know, and I mean, not building in the way that you have. You've from the ground up is just insane. But I talk to a lot of people at conservation organizations and like relatively small places and stuff. And one of the features that comes up time and time again is burnout. And the fact that they do burn out. And, you know, there was somebody I spoke to recently, Jim Thomas. He's out in Papua New Guinea doing tree kangaroo conservation. And he is originally from Australia, and he was back in Australia when COVID hit. And he was trapped away from his, you know, facility for a year plus. He couldn't get back to Papua New Guinea. He couldn't do it. And he genuinely believes that it like saved his passion and saved his career, because he was burnt out and he was going to go back, but he couldn't. And so he had to learn to, you know, trust other people and delegate more and all these things. And it probably saved his career. But yeah, I can't tell you how often I hear stories about just how hard it is and how you have to push through, and eventually you hit a point where suddenly it's sustainable. And then you're like, oh, look, we did the thing. But getting there is hard. Oh yeah. There's all kinds of success stories. Yeah, I love sharing them too. And yours, the thing is, I know it doesn't feel like it when you're in it. It's funny that this conversation came up today. I was literally texting with a friend before our interview about Rossifari and saying how I always forget to look at the success and look at how far I've come in, you know, 4.5 years, and how much better things are going. Cause I'm like you, I have visions that I can't even describe to people, you know, for what this could be and what I could be doing to help the animals. And I can't yet. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I you know, whatever. But you know, what you've done is already a success story. 14 years, educating children, building a facility that literally did not exist. Yeah, just saving that one manatee makes it all worthwhile. And I know you've done a ton more than that. You know, you've saved ocelots, you've saved tamanduas and giant anteaters. I was looking at your website. It's amazing what you've accomplished. And I do think that it's really like, just like person to person, you need to take a step back and look at that from time to time, because I can tell just talking to you, you are at risk of burning out. And that would suck, because with this passion, you need to be doing this. You are helping animals, and that's what matters, you know?
You know, and what you say is so true about that burnout. And, you know, I'm so lucky that I have my wife as a backbone support. You know, she's got a master's in logistics and business administration. So because of her, I will, and you got to give credit where it's due. Always, 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 always. Had it not been for her, and she came as a volunteer in 2016, had it not been for her, because anytime I would get funding, you know, I'll put it towards the animals and whatnot, but
right.
And not pay people and be like, don't worry, guys, like, you know, some money's going to come in, just hang tight. No, she really spreads it out, runs it like a business, how it's supposed to be, and put budgets on things, and definitely having our food, you know, budget and all those things, and to pay the personnel and whatnot. And unfortunately, you know, it's a little bit frustrating because you can't build anything because you don't have the resources. But burning out, I'm so happy that I've got staff here, because I would have burnt out had I not had the staff. I'm so grateful for them, and they have that energy, you know, that I had when I was a kid. And that's one of my biggest fears and that's me going back to what I was telling you about, how quick time flies by. I just want to get as much done as possible and take this project to what the possibilities are. And the possibilities are endless. And I want to still have the energy in me to be able to do it. So, you know, and I know, you know, time's against, you know, we don't know how long we're going to be here for, but time is against us. You know, I'm not as quick as I used to be. And, you know, I don't wrestle the manatees. I got swatted by a manatee like a couple of weeks ago, and it hurt my leg. Now what I'm seeing is the pains that I get in my femur, like the muscle inflammation is no joke. And that I didn't have that before. And I'm just amazed on that I'm getting older. Yeah. So And burning out is not an option, John, because I've thought about it. You don't know how many times I've thought about what else would I do? What else would you do? What else would I do? I'm passionate about cooking. I hey, open up a restaurant or whatever, just get rid of, man. But then that wouldn't fulfill me. Like, I believe that I've been put here, to make this world a better place. And I can say this, and I really hard with taking with appraisal, and it's nice to hear what you're saying. But what I can say is I've changed the lives of a lot of people here. I've got kids here that are working here that started off as coming here to our environmental education classes. They've gotten degrees. I will say that, Percy here. I've got lots of kids that, because of us, the project has helped their family and put them in a better situation. So, you do count the battles that you've won or you're winning, but it's just not enough. I feel I'm very hard on myself. This isn't enough. Like, so much more can be done. And that's my biggest problem. And I'm sorry, this is a psychological, this is like a therapy session, but I'm talking to you, and it's kind of difficult to have this conversation with our volunteers here because they're so young. And, and when I get older volunteers that you can actually have life experiences and you can kind of talk about these things too. And it's great. I love that, where you can talk with them and just think of ideas and how to make this project better. So thank you. Thank you for letting me vent and tell you the reality of the situation here. But yeah,
no, of course. And I love that because so many people, I love this podcast. I love how open people are, but it's very hard. You're not going to have somebody from a zoo come on and be like, oh, life is wall to wall crap sometimes. And sometimes they do. We actually did a couple episodes recently on like grief and losing animals and stuff like that. And it was very raw and very real. But, a lot of times you are showing the best, of course. That makes sense. So it's nice. I hope that everybody listening is able to fully appreciate that, like, you're doing the thing, but also it's terrifying and hard and scary and also awesome and wonderful and amazing. And you're overlooking a lake with a manatee right now. That's pretty awesome, but it's hard.
And it's ironic that you mentioned that, but that is so true. So going back, like I've had I've been able to get some experience in all aspects of the project, and that animal caretaking side, you develop relationships with these animals and you love them. Mm-hmm. You love them. And when you do have a loss, oh my goodness, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Like, it's heartbreaking. Oh my God. I had this one monkey, this woolly monkey, pass away on me. It was right around Christmas time, the holidays. And she came as an adult. And she was so domesticated. She had a metabolic bone disease. Her limbs were all crooked and whatnot, but she was the sweetest animal. And it was when I first really started caring for these woolies. She was sick, and there was nothing that I could do to get her better. I tried everything, and she ended up passing like a couple of days before New Year's. And I kid you not, or it was before Christmas. Yeah, before Christmas. That's what it was. I wanted to cancel Christmas, got depressed. I became an ogre. That's one thing also. I just was going to ruin Christmas for everybody. And I cried. I wanted to, just stay in my room. And then after thinking about it, and I kid you not, you know what got me through this, John?
What's that?
I thought in my head, and I kid you not, what would Rick Schwartz do? Would he cry because he lost an animal? I'm like, no. I mean, I'm sure he has before, but like, what would he do? I was like, yeah, I got to suck it up. And, so that's what got me through that. But even on the veterinary side, how stressing that is and whatnot. And it feels so good when you're giving these animals medication, they're doing better. And that's I think that's a very beneficial part of being a veterinarian. But the stress of all that, I do these things when, if it's a dire situation, I'll go in, put hands on things, help out our veterinarians and whatnot for things that they haven't seen, and we get through the problem. But it's so stressing when an animal is sick. So, and I'm happy that I'm able to step away from that. I've got other people worrying about that, but now it's just focusing on the kids and growing the project. That's what keeps me from not burning out. Because if I were to stay in that, what would you call it? In that position, you would get burnt out. Yeah, you would. And a lot of caretakers that have come here, they tell me, yeah, they get burnt out as well. So my respects to everybody in this industry. At least what keeps me sane here is if I get burnt out in an area, I'll just go to another area and just grow that.
Right.
And I'm so fortunate to be able to do that. And I guess, yeah, you got to count your blessings. You have to count your blessings. And yeah, John. Yeah.
So if anybody who's listening is interested in helping in any way, how can they reach out? How can they help? Tell me that.
Right now, it's, to maintain this project, to keep it going, what keeps it going is our volunteers. We've never been open to the public. Well, we offered daily volunteer experience where people would come at 8:30 in the morning and help us out with food prep and kind of just what the life of a caretaker. They have lunch here and just help us out with enrichment. But that only happens since we don't advertise that and want it to be like a small zoo. We've never really focused on that. So really, volunteers that come here and vet students is what keeps this project going. So donating towards the cause, if there's a project that they would like to donate to, they can see on our website different things that we have going. What I would love to do is have an endowment where these zoological facilities in the States have where they have that, that yearly revenue coming in that helps keep their project going. If we had a budget to keep things running, we could just continue to do what it is that we're doing and not be stressed about how to keep the bills paid. That's the biggest. So people can go on our website, volunteer, tell your friends, bring your families out here. This is a great family environment. We can house up to 24 people. And eventually, yeah, we get better accommodations. Just to make things clear, nobody's sleeping in tree huts, right? So we did at one point. Oh, wow. But, I've noticed that you have to, for these things to last here because of the environment, things rot here. So it has to be made of noble material, concrete. And it's the most costly thing, but, the accommodations are concrete now. There's some that have air conditioning people. That was a big requirement. There were some people that wanted hot water. So there is, right now, we had to get some air conditioning, some of the units. There is some hot water in some of the bathrooms that we have just to make it, a little bit more comfortable for certain volunteers that it is. But yeah, I don't know. What else would you suggest? How can we make this sustainable? And I don't know. We're trying to sell. Also another thing is just creating a business strategy to keep this sustainable. That's the most important thing. That endowment. There's a lot of, my thought process was there's a lot of people in the United States that are well off, that are looking for projects to really, help out. And I would love for them to really take us into consideration and see what it is that we're doing, John. And it's so discouraging seeing everything that's happening in the States. And it's sad because that's the kind of stuff that happens here in developing countries, where the money doesn't go where it's supposed to. And the money here, Rick and Heather, they can vouch. That's why we've created such a great relationship, because with the little resources that they've given us, we've been able to do everything that you see. The money has always gone to this project. I can't imagine of people taking money. What are you going to do with it? Like, what are people going to see me driving a Range Rover, or am I going to have a house in another country or somewhere? What do I go? And then what kind of a person would I be if I did that kind of stuff? And the reason why I reinvested here into the project, I live here. My family lives here. I've got such a beautiful life here, enjoying what it is that I do. And it's my home. So why would I not invest into my home? I'm so fortunate. I can't imagine growing up, working in a city and just this rat race and whatnot for materialistic things. I'm not taking anything with me. We're not taking anything with us. My dream is definitely to leave a foundation for my kids to continue. And they're every day working in this environment. Their passion for animals is incredible, embedding that into them. And if they don't decide to go into this, then one of these kids here that we change their life, they'll take over the project. We work towards something, but it's important. We had to get started. So, you can't have everything figured out when you first start. Things develop and, more ideas, and you develop it as you go. But the most important thing is getting started. And that's the God honest truth. That is the God honest truth. That's the God honest truth, John. So yeah, getting volunteers out here and helping us create relationships with universities. I would love to be a field study school. It's just putting the right people in the right places. We get, the right professors here, which we have, we've got some, we've been doing it, but everything can always be better. Everything can always be better. We structure it, we figure it out, what it is that we need to do, and we work towards that. That's what my way of thinking, solutions. How can we resolve this? Don't focus on, how hard it's going to be or what we're not going to be able to do. No, you have to find solutions for it. That's my way of thinking. Always, when a problem occurs, what's the solution? No point in crying over spilt milk or, how can we figure this out? That's way my thinking. And that's what's got me through these 14 years is with that way of thinking, John. That's the truth. That's the God honest truth.
It's a good way of thinking. I like it. And I think you'll find some cool, I have faith that you will find some cool new revenues to make things, streaming revenues and income revenues and such. So, it is time though for.
It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
It was cringy to my wife, being that she, but to me it wasn't that bad. I thought it was kind of cute, being the difficulties here sometimes that we have here is sometimes the animals escape from their enclosures. So we had a spider monkey, an adult female that we have, Susie, that you can still see here, and that a lot of volunteers, that have visited here know who she is. She's a sweet, big spider monkey that we have. And she got out of her enclosure, and it was a couple weeks to, it usually takes, some time to try to get her back in. We tried different methods, and she had one night we're sleeping and it's 4 a.m. and she had broke into our quarters and she was sleeping in bed with us underneath the cover. And my wife wakes up at like 4:30, 5 a.m, like, oh, and Susie's in bed, like looking at her like, what, am I not invited? And I guess that would be I guess not everybody has a story like that to tell, but I don't have anything like super gross, but
right.
It was kind of traumatizing for her. And we had our son, he was also in the bed with us too. He had to have been probably like a year and a half old or something. So she was kind of scared, but yeah, I think it's not too cringy. I don't know.
It's not cringy, but it's really cute. I like it. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, man. This has been really fun to chat.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate that.
I love how real that was and how inspirational John's journey is. And I love that we somehow started out with Kanye and ended up with all of that. Absolutely incredible stuff. I also just love how the Nashville Zoo was just there and being awesome, because that's what they do, and we love the Nashville Zoo. So yeah, very cool stuff. I want to take a moment to say thank you to all of my Red Panda level patrons, including Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, who has upped her support to Red Panda level, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, and Kevin Williams. Thank you all so much for your support. Appreciate and love y'all. And with all of that said, we'll be back with Zoo News on Friday, and I am going to be talking about wherever my brain leads me with this whole, bringing back direwolves thing. Yeah, I'm talking to a lot of people about it and getting their opinions, and I have my own opinions, and we're going to talk about that, y'all. So I'll probably see you there on Friday. And until then, remember, friends, the word credits backwards is Steiderk.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari, or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.